Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Yep, we're still doing them, still doing the pandemic. Boy, did I get a wake-up call this morning. It's 5 months since the first pandemic case broke out in the U.S., so wow. And it just reminds me how hard and how long our first responders have been working on this stuff. Thank you for all it is that you do. It's also a reminder that things are still out there. They're not getting that much better. They are better, but not that much better. So please heed the warnings of all of the folks that are out and about telling us what to do. Wear the masks, maintain your social distancing, take the proper precautions, stay safe, stay fishing. So what we've been trying to do along the way here is show you some reels, and I've come across quite a few interesting ones. Yesterday we did a Bronson Fleet Wing, which was from the 50s. Today we're going to work on a Maxel. It's a hybrid, and it's a small profile. I think I previewed the silver one of these the other day. I got 2 in from Mark. We're going to work on the black one. Very small, narrow frame, very high max drag. It says it has a max drag at 28. And I think that's because we're going to see a whole bunch of drag washers in there, and a relatively high speed of 5 to 1. Now, Mark's using this for jigging and shallow water fishing, but with that max drag, boy, you can do a lot of casting and some other things with it as well. This is a case where you're going to need some specialty bits. In this case, we're going to need a Torx, and if you don't have one of these, they're not that expensive. Get a multi-bit kit, and I think it'll pay dividends for you. This is 100 pieces of, it's a security bit set. It may have even come from Harbor Freight. I'm not quite sure where, but do yourself a favor and get that. Every now and then you're going to need a unique tool to help you finish with your fishing reel repair, and it doesn't hurt to have those on standby, particularly if you're working on some of the more modern reels. So like everything else, we're going to start. I have a protective glove on my hand. I have a parts tray that's the bottom of a milk jug. And I have, in this case, a micro screwdriver, because there's a set screw here that holds the nut cap on. And we're going to start by removing the external pieces and parts. So as always, I tell you, take pictures along the way. I don't have the schematic for this reel, so it's important to me to know how they came off and what sequence, and to work accordingly. Well, it's a snug little nut cap there. Just going to slide a blade in behind there so I can get it off that way. There we go, I hope. Everything's always a challenge, it seems. So I hope everybody's doing well with the pandemic and staying safe, and I hope you're staying fishing. That's kind of the whole idea behind this, and if you're not, it's always a nice opportunity to go tune up your tackle and get ready. So that's a 10mm nut. We just loosened it, and I like to take nuts and that off by hand if I can. That way I don't risk any threading issues in terms of cross-stripping. And that's a pretty substantial screw there. I'm believing that's stainless, and that's holding your handle in. Handle's next up. I'm going to take a note, there's a small little washer here. If you can't get the washer out by hand, you can always get it out by backing off the star adjuster. Sounds like the star adjuster's got a little click mechanism underneath that, so we're going to pay attention to how that click mechanism is set up. Take that star adjuster off. And it looks like we have 4 drag tensioning washers embedded in that click mechanism. And these you may have to take these out individually. These things have a tendency to kind of run. These are all nested. There's no, these are bell washers or concave washers. There's no pattern to them. They were all just nested inside one another, which will give you the least amount of variability in that drag tensioning. This guy seems like he's a little bit more particular about coming off here. And that happens over time. You just have to walk it up. And there was one washer. It's a flat washer compared to the concave washers. That flat washer is your bearing shield that sits on top of this. Alright, so I'm going to take the 4 of those bell washers. I'm just going to nest them right inside that, that little click mechanism. And I know that there's one more up here that I didn't see, but it's good to know it's there, inside your star adjuster. So you have a flat one, 4 tensioners, then you have the click mechanism. I'm going to put all of these into the case, and then you have the bearing shield washer. So I'm going to set that aside just to make sure that I keep that separate from the others. Now we can get to the case, and the case is held on by those Torx. I believe that's the number 10 Torx. I have this little screwdriver. It's wonderful. It enables you to break the screw, but then you can turn it by hand after that. I kind of like that. Just like this. It saves the wrist, but it also tells you how it's coming out if you're having any troubles in that. Alright, so that's one. And I'm going to lay that on my bench here just to make sure that all of these screws are the same size. Again, I haven't been inside this reel, so it's going to be a little bit of a study here in terms of trying to figure it out. So when I was talking to Mark is the owner of the reel. He tells me that the reel retails over $200. I didn't know exactly, maybe mid-200s. I neglected to ask him where he got it, but it seems like a nice, solid, sturdy example of a high-speed, small profile, built for braid kind of a saltwater fishing reel. And we're going to see inside in just a moment. So the 3 screws are the same. I like to protect those screws on the rebound. I'm going to put a drop of oil on there just to let it seep into the seams. Last thing you need is a hard or stuck case screw. And if you're using these in salt water, which is where Mark is using them, the salt tends to gravitate to those threads on the screw, and if we can avoid having a problem with that, we will. Alright, the case screws are off. This should simply pull off. I didn't check. I don't see screws behind there, so let's just see if we can't. There we go. Bring that off. And I like to remove the case straight up here, because if there are springs, they're only going to fly straight up. Sometimes if you pull from the side or that, it becomes an issue. They shoot. So let's just take this off easily and see what we got. Okay, so we have a spool adjuster here that's coming, must be attached to the outside coming through the case. You have a little bit of built-up grease. We have a collar and a bearing. I'm going to pull that collar out. We have an anti-reverse clutch. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on that. We have a front side bearing here. I'm going to oil that while we have this case out. And we have that little bit of grease there, so let's get that off the side. That's not doing anybody any good there, so let's just clean that up. And there's a little bit of sand here. Let's get that out of there as well. And I'm going to take a paper towel and just clean the side of the case here, get that old grease out, and where that sand was, we'll take care of that as well. And I'm not sure if that's a bearing up there where the spool adjuster is. It looks like it is. Doesn't need to come out, so let's just put some grease, some oil in that, and we can lay that case off to the side. Here's the reason for the high speed. You have a very big gear driving a smaller gear. That makes high speed, and that says for every 1 time that this turns, that's turning 5.1 times, and that's driving the spool around 5.1 times. 2 springs, get those out of the way in a hurry. This is where a parts tray is wonderful, so that it doesn't shoot anywhere. Get them out. Even that stuck to the grease on my hands. Let's pull the main gear assembly then. This has a forked anti-reverse in addition to that roller clutch, and it's held in by the case, so just be aware of that when we go to reinstall. Let's pull the yoke and the main gear off of here, or the pinion gear off of here. I'm going to set that to the side for a moment because I want to get under here and pull this assembly off to service the spool. So I believe everything else here is tied to the case. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws that need to come out here, and it looks like 2 of those are micro screws. So I'm going to see if I can get those out with a regular screwdriver first. I'll set that off to the side so I don't break that up in any way. It doesn't look like I will have anything shoot at this point. I think the rest of them are all pretty much held in either by clips or otherwise. I'm going to make another section of my parts tray here. I'm going to remove the screws that I believe is holding all of this on. And again, when you don't have that diagram, it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, and that cover here is holding on this plate. And this is a solid milled or machined gear side here, so you can't get the spool out from the other side. There are no connectors or anything, no seams in it, so you have to remove this backing plate here to get to the spool and the bearings. And how easy or how difficult that is, I was only going to tell. Here's an example of where that salt from the waters has gathered on the threads of the screws. So always good to kind of plan ahead. Here's another example. I'm seeing some salt on this. So we'll go ahead and we'll put a drop of oil on those. And then we'll move those to our parts tray as well. And that's, if I haven't said so already, these are good places to take pictures. Note the orientations on it. Of course, I'm taking pictures by a video at the moment, so that if I have trouble, I can come back in and take a look. But overall, it's kind of an interesting approach here. I don't think that this is wedded on here. We may have to take this screw out as well, but we're going to just see if we can't get this plate off. And that looks like it's pretty tight in there. So I'm going to grab another thing I have. I have a set of dental picks. Let's see if we just can't use one of these to pull it from behind. Kind of get it in there. Okay, well, I put the camera down and just had a changeover. I grabbed the pick. I grabbed the little hook that I have, kind of handmade tool off of an old pen wrench and some other things, and I was able to pry this up. So very tightly built into the case, but it's there, and it does simply pull out when you do what we did. Now I've noticed here is why it was sticking. We've just got that accumulated salt. And that salt just acts like a nice barrier to that, and helps seal it in, if you will. So we're okay with the bridge, and this is how you get to that spool. And you can see there's sand in there. Well, maybe you can't see, but yeah, you can. There's sand in here, and that's what was causing this to act the way it was. We should be able to pull the spool out now, unless we have too much braid on it. And we can clean up this spool, and this is why I wanted to get to it. There's 2 bearings on the spool. You want to get in there and you want to clean those. Now at this point, somebody's going to tell me to use compressed air here. Actually, I'm going to go see if I can find a can of compressed air. I had one somewhere. So I may just be shutting this off again. Actually, I think I will. But I pretty much have it clean, but let's go see if we can find that. Okay, got lucky. I found it. The only problem is I've had it so long that I've got dust on a can called dust off. We'll see. It's compressed air. And I'm going to blow this off to the side. It won't be on camera because I don't want to get sand on my bench. And that did a nice job. There's a little bit of composite, like saltiness or something here. I'm not quite sure what that stuff is, but it's not the sand any longer. So there, we just all learned something. We learned that I have a can of that around, and yes, it does work. So thanks to the viewers that send me those little suggestions about how to use some products on the video. Okay, I'm going to oil that bearing in the back. The spool is clear. I just want to make sure. I'm going to oil the bearing on the spool. And then we'll go reassemble it, and we'll probably trap this line in the assembly on the way back in, but that's kind of like a given. You can also put just a little bit of oil onto that click lever there. It's a nice solid click lever, so there's no issues there. I'll just drop this back in. Try and get it seated. Well, I'll tell you what, that narrow frame certainly doesn't make it very easy to... Yep, we could have bet that one, where I get the line trap. That isn't always a kind of a gimme there. Folks ask me when they send a reel, should you take the line off? I tell them that if it's an annual service, they should take the line off anyway. But if you want to leave the line on, I'm not going to complain to you about it. Just leave it on and know that you got to replace it eventually. I recommend replacing the line every year. Okay, that's it. When we go back in now, this is the little pin that spins the spool. So you want to make sure that it's even on both sides. Check the back of this. There's a little bit of gumminess on here, so let's make sure we clean that up as well. It seems to be coming off with a paper towel. If you needed something more, you could use some steel wool and the like. But overall, that just cleaned up nicely. And then the key here on the orientation is this, because that's your spool release throw. And then you need to make sure that the rest of the case is lined up. And that's a pretty tight fit there, so make sure that you align it properly. And I had loosened this screw here just to make it a little bit easier, so I want to make sure that I get that screw back and tighten so that we have the control over the release arm. And we don't, so we got to get back in here more. And that's a matter of those case screws now holding that down. So let's grab the 3 case screws, put those back in. You put a little bit of oil on there to keep those threads nice and tight. Again, if you had lost where the orientation is on these screws, then you would go back to your pictures and say, oh, one belongs there, and so on. These have little bump outs in it. It's easy enough to get these confused because you have case screws that are going to hold the other piece on as well. So don't be afraid to stop, whether it's to go get something like I did with that compressed air, or if it's something else. Don't be afraid to stop, take a deep breath, go get a drink of water or coffee or something, take a break, and come on back and wrestle with your problem again. Sometimes just clearing your head a little bit is going to help you solve whatever problem it is you may be dealing with. Alright, that's the 3 of these. This is the little forked anti-reverse I was talking about. It might be a little bit difficult to see there. Let's see if we can show you this way on the camera. It might be in the way, but there's a little fork here. That's going to grab a collar on the back of this collar. Clean that up. I'll put that over the top. There's a square in that, so you need to mesh it with the square here. But before we do that, we can put that last plate on. 2 sides to the plate. Make sure that the max drag side goes out. 2 little screws. It'll drive me nuts. And then we'll go back and we'll service this drag stack, and we'll learn a little bit more. I think I took that out with this one. Alright, there's one. Small miracles. Me and small screws don't get along. Those of you that watch the video, appreciate your patience. I try to do this from time to time. Got some bright shiny chrome too. I'm getting a reflection off the shop light here. Wow. I don't have that hole lined up. So this is where pins help. I have a little pin here that I use. That'll help me. There we go. Try that again. So overall, this is a quality reel, right? It's got the 3 or 4 ball bearings there. We noted the 2 on the spool, which always is nice for a casting reel. We notice the one in the case on the gear, that's 3, and I believe there's another one up there on that spool adjuster for 4. So it's a nice solid reel. Alright, we're back to this guy again then. So this is going to mesh with that fork that I was trying to show you before. You have to get that square onto your post, and then you can rotate, and that's going to move the dog in. When you rotate, you can see that, and there'll be a case here that'll hold it from going out. But just to show you the operation of that, it's going to run this way, it'll free, and as soon as you backpedal the reel, it's going to pull it in to stop. That's an old technology, but it works. Okay, now we're going to grab the assembly here. That's the top of my dental pick. I'm going to grab the assembly here. Just take a quick note, there's 2 sides on this plastic. One's got a ramp on it. The others are flat corners. The ramp is going underneath, so we're going to remove that. We'll just wipe off the old grease on the spool gear. Check the teeth to make sure that they're not beat up or anything. No bent teeth, no stuck greases or the like. And then we're going to put fishing reel grease on. I'm going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease for that. Go ahead and put that on. And we're going to remember the orientation on this. This is going to hook into the spool. This is going to be the bottom of it because it has that ramp. You can put a little bit of grease onto the shoulder for that. Hook that up. And then that's coming over the top here and onto the 2 posts. And I like to install that spool gear before I install the main gear. It just seems like that's the way it goes all the time, but even if it doesn't. And then I'm just turning to make sure I have that engaged. Okay, here's our drag stack then. We have heavy washers. This one almost looks like a washer from a Jig Master, but that's the first one. This has got plenty of grease on it, and you can leave them greased, or you can run these dry if I believe what I'm going to see inside there is Carbon Tex. The grease is there to stop the washer from drying out. It doesn't have any purpose other than that. So Carbon Tex recommends running dry. It said you can put grease on there if you like, and I think that's what we're going to find we have in here. Alright, I'm going to grab the stack then. We have the top washer. It has the 2 prongs in it for the collar that we saw before. Yeah, we have Carbon Tex and it has some grease on it. That's fine. But I'm not going to put any more on there. Like I said, they recommend running even or dry. And the second one is an eared washer. Just going to wipe the excess grease off of that. This is an eared washer, but it's pointed, and this one's pointing down. So make sure that as you go to reinstall, you notice the orientation if they are not flat points. And we'll clean this one off. This is kind of why I wear that glove if I can. There's greases around here, and if you can save yourself on the greases, in my case, I believe it's prudent. Some folks, kind of say, "Gee, why do you bother?" Well, just because I do, and I work on an awful lot of reels, and by the end of the day, I could have an awful lot of grease on it. You can see the grease I have on here just from one reel by itself today. The other thing is it wipes off nicely. Alright, and there's one more in the case here. Let's get that out. So yes, these are Carbon Tex drags, and that's why you have 24 or 28 or whatever that number was of max drag. You have a lot of surface area, and that's what max drags is all about, surface area. So we have 5 drag washers and 5 metals. That's going to produce an awful lot of max drag, which is what's in this reel. Alright, reassemble. We take a drag washer, and then if we were paying attention, we have 3 rounds and 2 with the tags. So the next one in, then we're going to put this on to maintain that order there. Before we do that, kind of getting ahead of myself, check the teeth on the main gear. Get grease onto that main gear. There we go. Now we can put that on. Mesh it with your spool gear. We have one in. The next one in would be a round one. Second of these. Now we have the eared washers points down. We noticed that as we were taking these out, the points go down. Next drag washer. These are fine. These are in good condition, so you don't need to do anything with them. Next one of the keyed washers, which has the flat sides and rides to that. Next washer. Eared washer points down. Top one. And then we have the one that is going to accept the gear sleeve. And I'm going to go into the basket right now and get that gear sleeve one. They have the 2 teeth, and I prefer to put that on here when I load a case as opposed to putting it into the anti-reverse clutch and then finding out that you're having all kinds of trouble getting those teeth to align. Everything is set here except for the springs. So let's go put the springs on. So easy to overlook these. That's one of the reasons why you want to make sure as you do this that you take the pictures and you hold a parts tray or something to keep your orientation up. Alright, this is that little spool adjuster. It's going to fit inside the spool there, so you got a little bit of a mating game going on. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We may knock this bearing out on the way out, we'll see. And you can't see this, but I can, and it's important for me to see. But I just put the stud from this into the spool gear. Now we should be able to press down, which we can. I like to give it a turn at this point just to make sure that I didn't jam something in between. And everything is turning below. There's that bearing coming out a little bit, but that's okay. Now we're going to just get those case screws. There's 3 of them if you remember. We oiled them to get some of the grit off of it. Back to that specialty tool. That's a Torx. Now I got to change the orientation on this. One of those little tools I've had for some time now, but I actually got it because I couldn't mesh the size of the screw on the pen reels, and then I found these electrician screwdrivers which were almost perfect and matched the bit, so I kind of went over to that. But regardless, the other thing, as you can tell, is it's magnetic. Alright, one on each side here. And we'll put the one up top. Trying to balance it. I don't tighten them all down until I get all 3 of the case screws in. The reason I don't do that is I don't want the case to bind. And sometimes when you're reassembling, something gets a little bit out of order, it binds, and then you get into a lot of trouble trying to figure it out. Alright, so I should be able to do the same thing in that I did out. Turn it by hand. Now we can tighten them all. And we'll just give it another turn here just to make sure. This also has a ratchet on it, so you don't have to turn completely on it, which is nice. I'm not sure whose it is. I think it might be Snap-on. Whatever, it's a nice one. So just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, my battery just died. So let's pick it up here, and hopefully we've got a smooth transition. We tightened the 3 screws down. We used our Torx wrench to do that, Torx bit. Now it's time to reinstall. I guess I put the bearing shield washer on already when it died, so I would just hope that it's there. Next up then is the little click ratchet. This was hard coming out, so I guess it's going to, there you go, hard going on. And we had the 4 of the tension washers. They were all nested. You have a shiny side and a dull side, so I'm going to put dull side up just to keep the piece consistent. And you can invert those or go face to face, side to side, back to back kind of a thing to get different tensions for your star adjuster, but these were all just the way I put them back in. Then there was that little washer that sat before your star adjuster. So next up then is the star adjuster. And at some point you're going to hit this little stud here for that adjuster. And that's simply just press that in with a screwdriver. That should help clear the case, which it just did. And we can complete the turning of that. Now you got the clicker, you know you're working well. We'll give it a run. Sounds like it's doing just fine. Next up then was the handle. Up we had that little washer that goes there. That's where a parts tray comes into play. It helps you to locate that stuff. Oops, slippery little guy. This my bench has a little oil on it there. Then we had that washer one on the outside of the handle. And we had the handle screw. I apologize if you can't see that very well there on the camera. And the screw goes down. I like to tighten that down as much by hand as I can. And we need a wrench. Tighten that down. You want to line the flat side of that handle screw with that hole so that you can get that. It has to be perpendicular to the hole so that you can get the nut cap on. Right, nut cap is up next. Small screw ties it all together. So we went reverse process in installing. We showed you how to take the reel apart, how to get that drive plate off so that you could service the spool, how to service the internals by making sure all of the gearing is in good shape, getting it all greased up. Showed you why this has so much max drag. It's got the 5 Carbon-Tex drag washers in there plus the one under the main gear. Showed you a little bit about the anti-reverse system and showed you why this is a nice reel. So okay, nothing left now but the final test drive then. So we've shown you how to take this reel apart. It's a beautiful reel. How to service the spool, how to remove that bridge in order to do that, how to tune it up, what it's made of, and how to get it back into service. So if you've enjoyed the video, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If you have any questions regarding reel repair, please leave them in the comments. I try to respond to all, regardless if it's this reel or something else. And if you don't have the wherewithal, or you don't have the time or the patience or the talents to repair a reel, and you have one that you would like to get fishing again that's somehow in need of repair, then please contact me on the by way of the business card that follows, and email is preferred. I generally can answer the emails quicker. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.